Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the League One Transfer Roundup. If you do go on to enjoy today's video, please make sure to drop a like on there for me and subscribe to the channel as well. If you are new, can we try and hit 120 likes on today's video? And don't forget to get your thoughts down in the comment section down below. What do you believe has been the best piece of business completed over the last 7 days, and how would you assess your club's transfer window so far? We'll start out firstly then with AFC Wimbledon. I did miss last week around Nathan Simwe, who has joined on a loan deal from Charlton Athletic. Scored a great goal on debut, I think it was. I don't think he played against Luton, but he scored against Lincoln at the weekend. Brilliantly taken goal, and I think that is a very good signing. Looked quite good in the second half of last season on loan at Walsall, and I do believe that is a smart addition for the Wombles. In terms of departures, I don't think they've seen anything further from that point of view, so we'll move on then to Barnsley, who recently did announce a signing of 28-year-old right back TENNAI Watson. He's come in on a free transfer. I think he signed a one-year contract with the club. Obviously, Barnsley needed defensive additions. They needed a right back or two. They need a right centre-half or two to come in as well, and I do think that is a smart addition. He did quite well in his game time with Charlton Athletic, and I do think that will prove to be a smart, experienced sort of option for Conor Horan's side. In terms of departures out of Barnsley, we did see Andy Dallas join Southend United on loan. He's obviously had a number of different loan spells away from the club since joining. I think he was at Barrow at points last season, and maybe Morecambe as well, I want to say. Now he's gone down into the National League with Southend. He might work out there, but he's never really going to have much of a future with Barnsley. Moving on then to Blackpool up next. They brought in 21-year-old striker Dale Taylor. He's come in on an undisclosed fee from Nottingham Forest. I think that'll prove to be a smart option for them. Obviously, he couldn't play on Saturday because of administration or registration issues, which is not ideal. Blackpool have obviously had a nightmare start to the campaign, but they'll be hoping that Dale Taylor can come in and score some goals. They also brought in Malcolm EBIOWEI, a 21-year-old right winger from Crystal Palace. He's come in on an undisclosed fee. I remember him from his Derby County days all them years ago. I think it's a smart signing at 21, still lots of potential for development and improvement, but based on the opening two matches, they need to bring in a goalkeeper or give Ravizoli a go, because Bailey Peacock-Crowell has been a nightmare in the opening two matches, hasn't it? I don't believe there has been any further departures out of Blackpool, so we'll move on then to Bolton Wanderers, who I don't think have made any signings over the last week or so. In terms of departures out of Bolton, again, I don't think anything further has happened from that point of view. My team, Bradford City, we haven't brought anybody else in through the door, and I don't expect us to do much transfer business, if I am being completely honest. But we did see the loan departure of Harry Ibbotson, a 19-year-old academy graduate who has joined Chorley on a 1-month loan. That is how limited there has been in terms of transfer business over the last week, and bringing you a 19-year-old who's played 4 senior minutes for a football club, who's gone out on a 1-month loan to a non-league side. It has been a very quiet week. In terms of Burton Albion, they haven't brought anybody else in through the door, and I don't believe they've seen any further transfer departures either. Cardiff City finally completed a signing. Yes, you heard me correct. 26-year-old goalkeeper Nathan Trott has joined on a loan transfer from FC Copenhagen, but again, that is all the business that they have done. Judging from what I've seen of Cardiff in their opening couple of matches, watching the first half against Peterborough, watching the second half against Port Vale, I believe they need some additions. They've got some really good players in that squad, but I just think they need a bit more just to fill that squad out, get a bit more experience in that side if they do want to be successful and achieve promotion this season, which I can only assume is their aim. There hasn't been any further departures out of Cardiff, so we'll move on then to Doncaster Rovers, who have brought in 19-year-old midfielder Charlie Crew. He's come in on loan from Leeds United. I think I'm right in saying he was there last campaign, so it just makes sense really. But apart from that, Doncaster have not done much business for a while. Donny fans, let me know down below, are you expecting any more additions over the next about 3 weeks or so we've got left of this transfer window? There hasn't been anything notable which has happened with Doncaster Rovers. We've seen a couple of loan departures, like Kyle Hurst, for example, has joined Gateshead on loan. He was very good in the first half of last season, was brilliant when Doncaster came to Valley Parade in one of our only 2 home league defeats last campaign, but he just hasn't really kicked on since then. Has had a couple of loan spells, and now will obviously be playing in the National League next campaign. In terms of Exeter City, I don't believe they've brought anybody else else in through the door. We had a great result on Saturday at home to Blackpool. In terms of departures away from the Grecians, again, I don't think anything further has happened from that point of view. So we'll move on then to Huddersfield Town, who have obviously had a very busy transfer window so far, but they haven't brought anybody else in over the last 7 days, and they've also not seen any further departures either. Leyton Orient, obviously, again, they've been very active in this transfer window so far. They've brought in Alfie Lloyd, a 22-year-old striker on loan from QPR. The O's are obviously going to be hoping that they can have a similar sort of return from Lloyd as what they got from Kelman last campaign, who was obviously on loan from Queen's Park Rangers. So again, I think if anyone's going to get the best out of these young talents that they've brought in, it's going to be Richie Wellens. He's a very good manager, certainly one that I do rate very highly, and obviously they had a great result at the weekend, beating Wigan Athletic. There hasn't been any further incomings though for Leyton Orient, and I don't believe we've seen any further transfer departures either. So we'll look at Lincoln City next then, who obviously haven't brought anybody else in through the door, but they did see the sale of Jovan Makama, a 21-year-old striker who has joined Norwich for around £1.2 million, something like that. So a great transfer fee to get in for Lincoln. I think he was pretty good towards the back end of last campaign, but they've got a lot of money coming in terms of transfer fees, probably around £2 million. They've not really spent that much. They've brought in Riley Towler, but I can't see that being a significant transfer fee. So Lincoln fans, let me know down below, do you expect much of that money to be reinvested in the playing squad? Moving on then to Luton Town, who again have had a very good transfer window on the whole so far, but they haven't brought anybody else in over the last 7 days. And I also want to say that there hasn't been any further departures out of Luton. I'm pretty sure we have already mentioned Jack Walton to Preston, but off the top of my head, that's not ringing too much of a bell. We'll move on then to Mansfield Town, who haven't brought anybody else in through the door, and judging by their start, maybe more transfer business is needed, maybe a bit of patience from the Stags fans, because losing away at Burton and at home to Doncaster, they're not the hardest fixtures in the world, so not an ideal start for them. They have conceded a fair few goals, and they've also massively improved their defence from last season as well. We did see a departure out of Mansfield. Keanu Bacchus is a 27-year-old midfielder who was joined St Mirren for an undisclosed fee. Obviously, he missed a couple of games last season through international call-up, and I feel like this season he was probably going to be 6th or 7th choice central midfield option. He just wasn't quite consistent enough, especially towards the back end of last campaign. He just didn't produce it enough for the money that he was probably on with Mansfield, so I do think it did make sense really for all parties for him to move on. In terms of Northampton Town, they have done a lot of signings in this transfer window. I know about Terry Taylor, but it's not already on Transfermarkt, so I'm not going to mention that in today's video. We'll bring that up next week, although that was technically confirmed today. Looking at the departures, nothing else further has been done away from the Cobblers, but they certainly need to bring in a few forwards before the end of the transfer window. In terms of Peterborough United, they haven't brought anybody else in through the door, but they've not had a great start to the campaign. Yes, they've played 2 relegated sides, but they've looked pretty poor in both of those matches, and I would expect more incomings to be had. In terms of departures out of Peterborough, nothing further has happened from that point of view. So we'll have a look next at Plymouth Argyle, who again have been very active in this transfer window so far, but I don't think have made any signings over the last week. You would expect surely some more incomings before the end of the window. They've got a lot of money coming in, and they've not really spent all too much. I think they spent less than £1 million on transfer fees, and they've got quite a lot that's come in through the door, to be fair. But over the last 7 days, we haven't seen any further departures away from home park. In terms of Port Vale, they have been pretty active over the last week. They've brought in a 22-year-old striker, Mo Fowl. He's coming on loan from Wrexham. I think that's a good addition. I would have loved him at Bradford City as that more target man option. He's a bit more of a Jayden Stockley type. I think they've got some good options at the top end of the pitch. He scored a decent amount of goals for Walsall and Doncaster when he was in League 2. Obviously didn't play much last season for Wrexham since his move from West Brom, but I do think that'll prove to be a smart addition for the Valiants. And they also brought in Joe Guaki. He is a 25-year-old Australian, I want to say, goalkeeper. Is it Australia? Is it New Zealand? It's both. Alright, fair enough. He's coming though on loan from Aston Villa to provide some competition with Marco Morosi. I think Ben Amos is still at the football club as well, so you'd maybe expect him to now go out the door as well. There hasn't been though any further departures that have come out of Port Vale. In terms of Reading, they have made an addition. Paddy Lane was one that I didn't mention in last week's video, so I do apologise about missing that. He's come in on an undisclosed fee from Portsmouth. Obviously, he was probably the Harvey Nibbs replacement. Did very well with Fleetwood a couple of years ago. He's moved to Portsmouth, didn't really work out, didn't play that much in the Championship last campaign and didn't really get the goal contribution. So I think a move to Reading could certainly suit all parties. At 24, there's still lots of room for growth and development in his game. In terms of departures out of Reading, nothing further I don't think has happened from that point of view. Rotherham United have not done any further transfer business, but given the recent injury news to Keona Tete and Sam Nombe, could we maybe see another striker come in through the door? I don't believe there has been any further departures out of Rotherham either. In terms of Stevenage FC, obviously they got the better of Rotherham at the weekend. They haven't brought anybody else in through the door, and there also hasn't been any further transfer departures. Stockport County, they've had a great start to the campaign, 2 great results at home to Bolton and away at Wickham, despite not playing particularly well in either of those games, but they haven't done any further transfer business over the last week, whether incomings or outgoings either. So we'll move on next to Wigan Athletic, who again, I don't believe they've brought anybody else in through the door over the last week, but they did see the departure of Ronan Darcy, I think a man who's recently spent time at Crawley, and I also want to say Bolton Wanderers as well. Let me know down below if I am wrong there, but he has obviously joined Chesterfield in League 2 on a loan transfer. 24 years of age, attacking midfielder. I think that could prove to be a smart signing for the Spireites, with him obviously being a little bit further down the pecking order this season for the Ticks than probably what he would like. And finally then, at Wycombe Wanderers, they've had a very, very busy transfer window. They brought in George Abbott, a 19-year-old holding midfielder on loan from Tottenham Hotspur. Did quite well with Notts County last campaign. I do certainly think there was an element of being overrated a little bit. He was good, he scored a couple of decent goals, but there was a number of times where I watched him and I just thought he's just not bringing enough to the game. I thought when Notts County came to Bradford City towards the back end of the campaign, it was in the final 4 or 5 matches he got played off the park by Brandon Cale, couldn't get a kick in that game, in my personal opinion. He has obviously now made the step up to Wycombe Wanderers, and it'll be interesting to see how he just handle the pressure of League One. And in terms of departures out of Wycombe, James Berry, a 24-year-old left winger, has rejoined Chesterfield on a loan transfer. Only signed from Chesterfield to Wycombe in January, and now he's gone back out on loan as well. He's moved to Wycombe, just hasn't really worked out. I think he's one of them sort of players where he needs to be loved, and I just don't really think the fans at Wycombe took to Berry straight away, and it's just not really worked out for him so far. So if he goes back to a club where he's loved by the fans, I think we could certainly see the best out of James Berry once again. But there is all of the transfer business completed over the last 7 days. But I'm going to leave it there then for today's video. If you have enjoyed, please make sure to drop a like on there for me and subscribe to the channel as well if you are new. Can we try and hit 120 likes as I mentioned at the start of today's video? And don't forget to get your thoughts in down in the comment section down below. What do you believe has been the best signing completed over the last 7 days, and how would you assess your club's transfer window so far? For me, the best addition that has been completed over the last week or so, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, I don't want to give it to a Paddy Lane or a Nathan Asimwe, that was obviously done in the week before that, but I do think there has been some pretty solid additions that have happened over the last 7 days, but I'm probably going to give it to, I mean, there's a part of me that wants us to give it to Cardiff just for making a signing, whether he's a starting goalkeeper or a backup, but I think I'm going to go with Blackpool for the addition of Dale Taylor. Thank you all for watching, have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you very soon for another one.